Goeienaand, good evening, fellow South Africans from a beautifully warm Brisbane. Now, I'm going to have a rant. Get over it, I'm going to have a rant. This Dr. Ndlozi of the EFF has really, to me, exposed the agenda of that party in the lead up to the next election. And it's not going to be pretty, guys. It's not going to be pretty. Let me read to you a comment that was made by one of my commentators, or by somebody commented on my channel just yesterday. It's an African fella, and it's quite a lengthy comment, but the only line I'm going to read is this one here. He says, "This is the same Julius Malema who employed white farmers in his farms." So apparently Julius Malema now has farms and actually employs whites on his farms. Okay? And he goes on to say that he is not racist. He is not a racist guy. This things that they are doing and saying is just making them, the EFF, to be famous and get votes only. So what this fellow is saying, and I have a feeling he's in the know here because he's very active on my channel. The whole reason that they're coming out with all these racist comments and they're now going after journalists is to create an emotive response and get people to start voting for them. And they don't care about the ramifications of being racist, using racist terms. I won't even mention the sort of things they're saying, because they don't care. All they're worried about is votes. Now, the interesting thing about the video that's attached, which is Dr. Ndlozi, the EFF fella, is that he says, we don't care if there's violence before the election. We don't care. And they're actually kind of promoting violence in South Africa in the lead up to the election. Now, there's a growing amount of violence happening now, black on black. And if that goes into the political sector, which is what the EFF are trying to make it happen, I have a very strong feeling that this could become the start of a black-on-black civil war in South Africa. And they've got to stop these EFF guys because they are absolutely feral. I mean, we know the BLF are worse, but they're a much smaller party. The comments made by Dr. Ndlozi in the video that's attached are very, very disturbing, because it just shows that they don't care about violence. They don't care if naming and shaming someone results in them being murdered. They are a very, very dangerous political party, and their only objective, guys, is to garnish votes. That's the only thing that they're interested in, and they don't care who gets hurt while they do it. All right, guys, please remember to subscribe and have a great day. Here comes the video.
On to this story now. The EFF says it will oppose any attempt to oppose the truth. This follows an ongoing spat with the South African National Editors Forum, which has lodged a complaint with the Equality Court against the party. It cites threats against journalists by EFF leader Julius Malema and his supporters as the reason for approaching the court. Let's get some perspective now on the story, and we're joined by the EFF's spokesperson, Dr. Mbuyiseni Ndlozi. Dr. Ndlozi, before we begin our conversation, I'd like us to listen to the chairperson of the South African National Editors Forum, Mahlatse. Let's have a listen to her. We spoke to her yesterday, and let's listen to what the concerns are.
Our ultimate concern is ahead of 2019. I mean, and it's not a fear without anything. We've seen the escalation in terms of attacks on journalists towards elections. We saw that spike in the 2016 municipal election. We know that there are a lot of responsibilities on political parties. Part of it is that the IEC makes them sign and commit to a peaceful election, and that allows the media to do its work. So there's still a lot of options. But ultimately, what we are saying is that let's all stand for the Constitution. The first sign of a democracy that is about to fail is when journalists are not able to do their work. And we should never, wait and say, this one, let's let it pass. We must act when the threats to our Constitution and our democracy arise and actually hold everybody accountable.
Dr. Dloze, you've heard from the chairperson of Sanef. The question here is, does the EFF remain committed to that pledge which you signed for a peaceful election?
There hasn't been pledges signed yet as the first disinformation, because there's not even an election date yet. So those things are still going to happen.
What previous pledges?
It's previous elections. I think she's talking about 2019 elections. That's not the point. So let's stick to the real question that Sanef approached the Equality Court for. They claim that the EFF is attacking journalists and threatening them and intimidating them. And they have prayed to the court that the leader of the EFF must be intimidated, made to apologize for his attacks. And they don't say what those attacks are. But what we've been doing is being very critical of some journalists, their bias. And we believe that there is a lot of embedded journalism which is facilitated in the interest of the status quo, in particular Pravin Gordhan. We believe that there is a lot of embedded journalism linked to the people who seek the destruction of the EFF, because the EFF attacks and exposes white monopoly capital and its role in relation to recovering through Cyril Ramaphosa after the Zuma years.
Dr. Dloze, I'm just actually going to talk about the lived experiences of some of the journalists who were named by your president outside the State Capture Commission of Inquiry, and what has happened to them subsequent to that. Attached to the court papers of Sanef to the Equality Court is an affidavit, a sworn affidavit by Ranjeni Munsami, who says that mere days after that speech by Julius Malema, she was confronted by 3 men in a Johannesburg mall who essentially hurled insults at her. Surely that has got to raise concern in as far as incitement is concerned. Do you have, as a party, regrets about naming individual journalists in public platforms?
No, not at all. I mean, I would hope that, she goes to an actual police station so that video footage of a mall can be produced and we hear the insults that were held against her. The EFF was very clear through its president outside Diso Black Star. The president of the EFF specifically said our battle with these embedded journalists is ideological. It's an intellectual exercise, even called on fighters and supporters of the EFF on the same day. A video that we have repeated over and over again on our own platforms. We have said that, some of these people are women journalists. You must deal with them intellectually. So if they are absolutely superior logic, all those things were said outside the court at Diso Black Star, and I would wish that maybe you would have played it as well. So the point I'm making is you can't go to an equality court to ask that people must not attack you in a mall and say that Julius Malema must be made to apologize for people you met in a mall. You can't do that. So what is this court action about? At the core, this court action is about shutting us down. And you, Xoli, as the media, are not above criticism. Not after Stratcom, not after the role of the media in the Iraq. There is ample evidence of the ways in which there's disinformation, you people being fed illegal information. You use it in your media, you use it to fight political battles on behalf of political actors. But forget journalists, the people who are actually doing stories. Ranjeni, Feriel Hafaji, Peter Bruce have standing columns. And in those standing columns, in most of the cases, they are campaigners. They campaign in the interest of the Pravin agenda. They campaign in the interest of the Cyril Ramaphosa agenda. If we expose that, it's not an intimidation.
There is a particular meaning attached to the word embedded, and then you also use in the same sentence Stratcom. We all know what Stratcom was about in this country back in the apartheid years. Is there anything wrong with journalists writing opinion pieces? Because these are opinion pieces. How does it come about that you define them as, or you define their opinion in those opinion pieces as embedded journalism?
No, that's not what I did.
At what point?
No, that's not what I did. I'm saying to you, that's why that's why the opinion pages are not in news. It's because they are not news. They are opinions. Meaning you are making an opinion, and if your opinion is to campaign that white people must vote the ANC, or the DA must vote with the ANC, you're giving a political advice. And if I'm responding to that your opinion basically is to campaign for the African National Congress on an opinion piece tomorrow, and you want me to trust you that your journalistic efforts are above board. So that's why they are on opinion pages, those things. It's because they are not news. So once you descend to the arena, you begin to campaign for certain politicians, you begin to campaign for specific agendas. We have the right to come for you, to disagree with you, to expose you as a person that is standing against our ideological objectives. You're not doing an unbiased, independent, above-board journalistic article. That's not what you're doing.
Is there anything intellectual about your supporters going on social media pages where they name certain journalists? For example, Karima Brown was named as #1 target for people, for supporters of the EFF to essentially be targeted, and she has gone as far as to the police station to lay a
We're going to target them. We're targeting those individuals.
Which individuals?
All of them, Karima Brown, Ranjini Musa, they are our targets. We're going to guard them because they've got an ideological agenda against the EFF. We're going to guard them. The target is about guarding them to make sure that we expose and respond to them at all times. That's what Twitter streets are about. If you don't want to be on Twitter, quit. Go to your room and stay there. Don't engage. If you take an opinion, if you have taken a decision that you're going to campaign for a specific agenda, those that you campaign against have a right of response. So they are our target. There's nothing wrong with that.
Are there efforts behind the scenes that you may be aware of to try and resolve this matter amicably with Sanef? The understanding is that Sanef would still want to sit around the table, and they've been left with no choice but to go to the equality.
Sanef has gone to court that we must be shut down. Those are not people who are... You don't go to court to ask for a meeting.
They've gone to court on the basis...
But you don't go to court to ask people
on the basis
to
of
say to court, force the people... You go to court, you say court must force the people you disagree with to sit down with you. Who does that? It's abuse of court. It's actually a ridiculously foolish idea, by the way. And it's a helpless effort of self-seeking and attention-seeking people. We'll meet them after elections. We told them we'll meet them. But we'll meet them after elections. And by the way, this is a group of bosses. These are editors. These are bosses. These are people who decide on the narrative, the shape, the size, the time of stories. These are not actual people which we interact with on the ground. Have you asked yourself a question why we didn't name Paul van Wyk?
The issue here, Mr. Ndlozi, is that you have young journalists. I'm glad you mentioned that the Sanef representatives are editors. You're quite right. The issue here is about young journalists who are now fearful of going to EFF briefings and writing critical...
Give me an example. Give me an example of a young journalist who's afraid. Are you young? Are you young?
I'm a young journalist.
Are you afraid? Because you can't give me a person who is.
I can tell you what my reservations are.
Karima Brown is scared of criticism, and I'm happy that she is. If she's scared, that's okay.
Wait, let me tell you what
There's no young journalist, Oli, that is scared of coming to EFF events, of covering us. It's not true.
Let me tell you what my reservations will be if I went to an EFF media briefing tomorrow and wrote a story that is published on this station that is critical of the EFF. The first thing is that I'm going to get hate on my Twitter page. Wait, hold on.
Yeah, I'm holding
hate
on.
Twitter
I'm
page
holding on.
to say how Stratcom I am and how embedded I am as a journalist, and perhaps I should be targeted. Do you think that...
Have you not been critical of the EFF before?
I have written.
Have you been targeted? This is unique. Don't generalize it. This is unique. There is no targeting
I
of
can show you
people.
my timeline.
There's no targeting of people who are critical of us. We are targeting people who have got an ideological agenda that is intimate with white monopoly capital represented by Pravin Gordhan against the EFF. They are embedded, they are fed information by people who are linked to the rogue unit. They work with them to discredit the EFF and its leadership. We have said who those people are who are intimate with that agenda of those individuals linked to Pravin Gordhan. That's why they even went to the Equality Court. That's where Pravin Gordhan went. They even cite him as one of the people that are targeted like them in their court papers. You have been critical. This station has been critical of us. I'm sitting here. Are you intimidated?
Absolutely not right now.
Yeah, but that's what I'm talking about. We've always had a critical relationship with journalists, and I mean, at all times, we've been critical of the ENCA. ENCA comes to our events. We've never blocked them. We've never physically harassed them. We've just always been critical of them. If you feel the heat, if that's why you're not going to come to an EFF press conference because you are scared of criticism, you shouldn't be a journalist.
Now, just based on what you have said, that we report in a manner that will be not fearful nor prejudicial, but also we do no one favors here. Just on this score, let me take the opportunity, therefore, to ask you this question. Is the EFF leadership comfortable with a leader of that party and his spouse occupying a rented property of over 7 million rand when you advocate for people to occupy, for people to be given land? Is there something that resonates with the party ideology when you deal with that? I'm going to ask about Mazzotti. Just answer me on this score for the moment.
Oli, you see, that's a very, very, very sad question, by the way.
Why?
What Miss Malema does with her money, what Miss Malema does and where she goes to live, it's really her decisions that must be respected. If she grew up as a black privileged woman, she went to school. By the way, she's an accountant, she's in finance, she's highly educated, as the president has said. I'm not here to participate in her targeting. I'm not here to interrogate. There's nothing wrong, there's nothing illegal. There's nothing unethical. She's not giving. She's not benefiting. She's renting. There are people who... The properties in South Africa, everywhere we go, majority of this country is owned by white monopoly capital. We won't have anywhere to live, by the way. The point of a pro-poor agenda is not to keep them poor. No. It is not to join them in their poverty, humiliation, and indignity. It is to uplift the living conditions. It is to uplift when you say to rent, she's not paying rent of 7 million rand. By the way, you don't know how much rent she's paying. Because that's her private information. It's not yours. She's not a public representative. She's not accountable to you. She's not a leader of the EFF. The leader of the EFF lives in Cape Town. He's not even there majority of the time. I'm here again this afternoon or this morning, responding and talking about where Miss Malema lives, when there are proper, legitimate security threats on the life of the president of the EFF. It's wrong.
Let me ask you this question, Mr. Ndlozi. Is there anything wrong that the party sees? Does Mr. Malema see anything wrong with that property? Allegedly, in fact, you can clear it.
It's not an illegal...
Allegedly being owned by Adriano Mazzotti.
Chief, there's nothing illegal.
Who is a self-confessed...
Oli, there's nothing illegal.
Smuggler of cigarettes.
There's nothing illegal. You must tell me what is illegal that the Malema family is doing. If you want to talk about Mazzotti, let's talk about Mazzotti. Let's talk about Mazzotti and his criminal activities. He's confessed this, he's confessed that. That is Mazzotti, that's not Miss Malema. And she's not given a property.
She's not party associating with such people.
We are the ones that told you that Mr. Mazzotti in 2014 gave us a donation long before people knew who he was. By the way, it is our conviction that the reason why you know all those things is because after giving the EFF money to register into 2014 general elections, she became a target of state institutions. She became a target of SARS inquiry because he donated to the EFF. And as a result, he had to be smeared, he had to be followed, he had to be interrogated, and that's okay. Now that we know that, we have not received any other more money from him. Miss Malema is not donated to. You are saying it yourself. She's renting. You don't know how long she's been there. Now, my point is very simple here, my brother. Don't be part of the destruction of people's rights. People's private rights to privacy, rights to dignity, just because you're seeking to discredit the EFF. There's nothing illegal in that. There's nothing unethical in that. If you want to talk about Mazzotti and what he did, we are the ones that opened up to the fact that we went to court, we protested, we couldn't get, nobody funds us. No white monopoly capitalist funds us. No one. We are funded in most of the cases by members of the EFF, by supporters of the EFF. And I'm saying to you now here that the links that you keep repeating every day in relation to Mr. Mazzotti and the support of the EFF, it's not your discovery, it's not your investigative journalism.
And
it is
you
us who
continue
told
the
you.
association.
We haven't received any other donation since that.
All right.
We haven't received any other donation since that.
All right. Dr. Mbuyisa Ndlozi, thank you very much for giving us.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for coming to this platform.